I'm starting a brand new author today that I've never, ever read before. So we're going to go through it together. Sorry. All right. Jenn McKinlay. Books can be deceiving. There's a series, several books already in progress, and that's what I like. I'm a series person. I can't read standalone books. It's got to have an established series ready for me to even consider reading it. Also check in with Goodreads and or cozymysteries.com. And again, I always recommend a couple of my favorite authors, Donna Andrews, the Peacock series, I call it. Victoria Thompson, the Gaslight series is phenomenal. I love Molly and Frank and Maeve and Catherine and Gino and the whole gang. They're great. All right, so I'm going to try this real quick and see how it goes. Like I said, I've never picked up this book before, and I'm a little blind here. Let's just do this quick together and see how it goes. Oh, I just love that Maximum D. Winter, Violet LaRue said, her knitting needles clicking together as if to emphasize her words. He gives me the shivers. Huh? Oh, sorry, it says him. Nancy Payton asked, he's not nearly as scary as Mrs. Danvers. Lindsay Norris glanced up from her knitting at the two ladies sitting across the circle from her. It was Crafternoon Thursday, where members of the Crafternoon Club gathered at the Briar Creek Library to do a craft. Currently, they were knitting and discuss the assigned book of the week. Lindsay was the director of the library, and this group had been one of her ideas to make the Briar Creek Library the place to be in the small town. Unfortunately, she had discovered that her ability to knit and talk at the same time was about as good as her ability to pat her head and rub her tummy at the same time, which meant it took great effort and the results were not pretty. Oh, that Mrs. Danvers, Violet chuckled. Someone should push her out of a window. Violet was a tall, thin black woman with warm brown eyes and gray hair that she wore pulled back from her face in a tight bun at the back of her head. She dressed in colorful, flowing craftons that whispered around her when she walked. She was a retired actress, having starred on the Broadway stage most of her life, who now volunteered her time at the Briar Creek Community Theater. She was an expert knitter, and it irked Lindsay to know that she wasn't even looking at her needles while she spoke. I read that Mrs. Danvers is one of those most infamous female characters in literature, Nancy said, also not looking at her needles. She was Lindsay's landlord and Violet's best friend. I can't knit for my life. Not one stitch. Lindsay dumped her knitting needles in her lap and said, Rebecca is Daphne du Maurier's greatest work and frequently draws comparisons to Jane Eyre. Oh, she's getting irritated with her knitting again, Violet whispered to Nancy. I am not, Lindsay protested. It's all right, dear, Nancy said. You always put on that scarly voice when you're frustrated with your knitting. I do not, Lindsay protested. A widow in her mid-60s, Nancy was a delightful landlady. With her short gray hair and sparkling blue eyes, she did not miss much that went on around her. She liked to bake cookies. She was teaching Lindsay to knit, and she never nagged about the rent, but sometimes she mothered Lindsay, and at 35, Lindsay wasn't really sure how to tell her to knock it off, especially when it was kind of her nice when it was kind of nice to have that maternal softness in her life. Do not what? A voice asked from behind her. Lindsay glanced over her shoulder to see a giant teapot standing behind her. A few months ago she would have found this odd, but not now. How was story time? She asked. Full house, Beth said. The kids loved my Mrs. Potts outfit, and of course I taught them all to sing I Am a Little Teapot. Naturally, Lindsay said. If Beth weren't a librarian, Lindsay was pretty sure she would have been a circus performer. She could just see her balanced on a pony riding around the ring in a tutu with a feather on her head. Beth brought that over-the-top energy to her role as children's librarian and in fact to her whole life. Lindsay had met Beth Stanley more than 10 years before when they were both attending Southern Connecticut State University to get their master's degree in library science. They had ended up rooming together in a small second-floor apartment on the boulevard in New Haven. It had never been dull living with Beth. Lindsay still remembered the day she had come home from class and found Beth painting a life-size mural of a rabbit warren on the living room wall. She had just read Watership Down and was inspired to get a pet bunny, which she named Blackberry after her favorite character in the book, and was decorating the living room to look like a rabbit's habitat so that Blackberry would feel more at home. Upon graduation, Beth had come here to Briar Creek to be the children's librarian, while Lindsay had pursued a more academic career, becoming an archivist at the Beck Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library at Yale. Her undergraduate work had been in literature, and she had originally thought that she'd go on to pursue a degree and position to become a museum curator, but she found the library world to be a better fit. It wasn't hard for her to guess why. She had been a nerd to the 10th power as a kid, a bookworm who played the flute in the band, wore thick glasses, and kept her blonde hair cut short in a frizzy bob. She was a bit of a loner, preferring the company of the character in her books to actual people, the only exception being her brother Jack. Things had been going just as she planned right up until 6 months ago. Suddenly her personal life had imploded and the economy tanked. Budgets had been slashed at the university and positions eliminated, one of which had been Lindsay's. When Beth heard that she had been let go, she encouraged her to apply for the open position of library director in Briar Creek, a quaint town perched on the shore of Connecticut. Lindsay had been charmed by the library and the town, and when they offered her the job she had agreed and had been the director of small public library for several months. So what is it that you don't do? Beth asked. I do not put on my scholarly voice when I get frustrated with my knitting, Lindsay said. Yeah, you do, Beth said as she shimmied out of the enormous teapot. She was short and curvy. Her cropped black hair was arranged in wispy spikes, a disarray on purpose sort of hairdo. The spray of freckles across her upturned nose made her seem younger than she was, but it was her childlike exuberance that really rolled the years back from her true age of 32. Lindsay knew whenever she heard laughter in the library, it was usually because Beth was in the building. Where's Mary? Beth asked. She said she was short-handed at the cafe and would be running a little late. I hope she brings some chowder with her, Violet said. That would be perfect on a cold, rainy day like today. Beth agreed as she plopped into the cushy seat beside Lindsay and pulled her knitting out of her Friends of the Library tote bag. She was working on sapphire blue cardigan that just begged to be snuggled in. Honey, what exactly is that? Violet asked Lindsay as she leaned forward to get a better look at the pile of heather blue yarn on her lap. Lindsay held up knitting. Socks. Well, a sock. Violet and Nancy exchanged a look, and Beth glanced at her out of the corner of her eye. What? She asked. Come on, spill it. Nothing, Violet said. But, who are you knitting it for? My dad. Oh, so he is real, Nancy said. There was a twinkle in her blue eyes that should have won Lindsay, but she missed it. Of course my father is real, she said. Wow, so how does it feel to be a descendant of Bigfoot? Beth asked. She muffled her laugh with her knitting. What? Lindsay asked, and she looked at the sock on her two circular needles and found, oh, it's not that big. I was going to read the whole first chapter, but it's getting into 10 minutes now, and I don't want to. So, I don't know. What do you think? We'll have to see. Should I finish the first chapter? I can try. Where's... Alright. I don't want to go too long. All three of them stared at her. Did you check your gauge? Nancy asked. To her credit, she didn't add huh or duh to the question. No, Lindsay admitted. All three of the other ladies shook their heads. You have to check your gauge, Nancy said. Swatching, it's a rule, Violet said. Like not wearing white shoes before Memorial Day, Beth added. Amen, Violet and Nancy said together. I'm good. Well, if you want to finish the chapter yourself, books can be deceiving. Jenn McKinlay. I will let you know how I find the rest of the book. I hope you enjoyed it. I know my reading isn't the greatest in the world, but it was something new. I thought I'd just give us both a try. My cat didn't like it either. She left. So, have a good day.